It started on a night that should have been ordinary, a night that would unknowingly change everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and betrayal. The air in the small living room was heavy, as if it could absorb the tension that hung between us. Charlotte and I had been drifting apart for years, yet somehow, the remnants of our past clung to us like stubborn shadows. That evening, it was supposed to be just a game, truth or dare among friends, but the moment she lost, everything spiraled into chaos. The question was simple, almost childish, yet the answer from her best male friend ripped through the fragile thread of trust one still had. He answered instantly, almost too eagerly, "Pink." And then, like a knife twisting in a wound, he added, "Willow has always treated me like one of her sisters. I've even washed her underwear before. Brother-in-law, don't overthink it." I froze. My blood ran cold, and the words I had been suppressing for years surged to the surface. Anger, disbelief, and humiliation collided in a storm within me. I cursed under my breath, and my voice broke the tense air. "Are you fucking stupid?" Charlotte's face changed in an instant. The innocence I had once seen there was gone, replaced by a flicker of something I couldn't recognize. That night, I realized that some people wear masks so well that you only see the truth when it's too late. The tension escalated as I struggled to process what had been said. Around us, laughter and chatter seemed to fade into a dull hum. I could feel every glance, every judgmental stare, yet the focus remained solely on that moment of betrayal. Charlotte tried to explain, but her words were drowned out by the roar of my racing thoughts. Years of memories, promises, and silent agreements clashed violently with this shocking revelation. I wanted to scream, to run, to erase the night entirely, but I couldn't. Not yet. Days passed, but the memory didn't fade. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that smirk, that casual betrayal that she and her friend had thought would never reach me. I realized then that love isn't just about affection, it's about respect, boundaries, and the subtle ways people define loyalty. Charlotte had crossed lines, and for the first time, I truly questioned whether what I felt for her had ever been enough. The incident became the silent echo in every conversation, every meeting, every encounter that followed. Friends noticed my change. My silence was heavier, my laughter rarer, my presence colder. Months later, a shocking turn of events brought me back to her orbit. A call from Charlotte interrupted my otherwise calm evening. "Horace, we'll be picking up the marriage certificate at the Civil Affairs Bureau in 5 days." My heart skipped. 5 years had passed since we had gone our separate ways. I had built a life, a quiet one, away from the chaos she thrived in, yet her words shattered the fragile peace I had created. My mind raced. Did she not remember the breakup? Or was this some elaborate scheme? The memories of our past collided with the present, each flashback more vivid than the last. I remembered the promises we had made under the wide, star-strewn skies during our youth, the whispered dreams of a grand future, the naive belief that love alone could conquer all. And now, after half a decade, those dreams returned, not with warmth, but with a cold, cutting edge. Charlotte's voice over the phone was steady, confident, almost cruel in its serenity. "Break up? I never agreed to that. Don't worry, the groom is you. As for Jordan, I hope you can be magnanimous." I laughed bitterly at the absurdity. Jordan, her so-called protector, the man she had used as a placeholder in my absence, was now expected to be acknowledged as part of her scheme. My mind felt torn between incredulity and amusement. I could almost hear the comments flooding social media in real time. The male lead left without a word for 5 years. Don't be fooled, her heart must be breaking. Charlotte announced she was marrying Jordan, but it was all to give the male lead a grand wedding. The world had its say, but I had mine. And mine was clear. I no longer belonged to her drama. The night I decided to confront her was etched into my memory with painful clarity. The faint knocks at my door were like whispers of the past, urging confrontation. "Open the door, Horace. How long are you going to make a scene?" Her voice was familiar, yet alien, sharp, disturbing, carrying the weight of unspoken accusations and expectations. I opened the door to find Charlotte disheveled, her gaze scanning me as if measuring how much time had changed me. Her sneer, her confidence, the audacity, it was all unchanged. "TCH, without me, you've become a mess, she taunted. I glanced down at my casual homeware, my father's old shirt, and realized she had noticed. Comfort had replaced style, yet she mocked it as if it reflected my worth. I barely had a chance to respond before she continued, twisting every memory into a weapon. "All right, since you realize your mistake and you're back, I won't hold the fact that you left in a huff against you. But the punch you threw at Jordan back then, I can't forgive you for that. Now that we're getting married, it's thanks to Jordan's understanding. I hope you'll apologize to him." Each word was a carefully calculated jab. Each sentence reminded me why I had walked away in the first place. I could feel the anger rising, yet I held it at bay. I was no longer that naive young man who would let emotion dictate action. Her words, though sharp, could not pierce the armor I had built over the years. "Charlotte," I said calmly, letting the coldness of my voice serve as a shield, "why do you think I have to be with you? Have you ever thought that 5 years is a long time, long enough for me to have moved on, built a family, found peace?" Her eyes swept over me, filled with disbelief, outrage, and a hint of obsession, as she retorted, "Who in the circle doesn't know that you've always been my simp?" I laughed, a bitter, genuine laugh that held no warmth. "Charlotte, now your family is on the decline. Which family would want to marry their daughter to me? It's only you who would let me marry into your family." Heh. That night, as I stepped away from her storm, I realized the truth I had known all along. Charlotte was a whirlwind I had survived, but I was no longer in her path. I had found a life worth protecting, a love worth preserving. She was merely a reminder of the past, a past filled with lessons that had cost me sleepless nights, endless contemplation, and emotional turmoil. I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that belonged to a man who had endured and emerged unbroken. And with that, I left, knowing that this confrontation was just the beginning of a saga that would test boundaries, patience, and the very definition of love itself. The city lights glimmered outside as I walked back into the quiet of my life. The night held no answers, only possibilities. Charlotte's shadow lingered, but it would not define me. I had learned, survived, and, most importantly, grown. And in the quiet moments that followed, I made a promise to myself. No one would manipulate my heart again. No one would dictate my happiness. This was the new chapter, a chapter where I was the author, and every choice, every step, was mine alone. The days after that confrontation were restless. My mind refused to accept peace. Every corner of my apartment echoed with memories of Charlotte, the sound of her laughter, the glint of mischief in her eyes, the scent she always carried, lingering as if the universe itself refused to let me forget. I tried to bury it under work, under routines, under meaningless distractions, but nothing could mask the storm brewing inside me. Then came the message I had been dreading yet somehow anticipating. "Meet me at the old cafe. There's something you need to know." It was Charlotte. My first instinct screamed to ignore it, to continue my life without her toxic pull, but curiosity, and perhaps a hidden desire for closure, made me agree. I arrived at the cafe, a place frozen in time, where we had once shared laughter, tears, and promises that now felt hollow. She was already there, seated with a calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos I felt inside. Her eyes met mine, a mixture of triumph and something I couldn't decipher, regret, maybe, or manipulation. "Horace," she said softly, yet every syllable carried weight. "You think you understand everything, but there's a truth you've never known." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "And what would that be?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm within. Charlotte leaned closer, her tone conspiratorial. "Jordan. He's not just a placeholder. He's part of something much bigger, something you've been blind to all these years." My pulse quickened. The past 5 years suddenly seemed like a labyrinth I had wandered blindly. "Explain," I demanded, refusing to let her words linger as mystery. She took a deep breath, recounting events that sounded impossible. Jordan had been more than a friend, more than a confidant. He had been the invisible guardian of secrets I had never known, orchestrating events to protect me without my knowledge. Every time I thought she had betrayed me, it was Jordan working behind the scenes to prevent disaster, to shield me from a truth far more devastating. My heart twisted. Could it be that the woman who had caused me so much pain was also someone I had underestimated? The revelation didn't come with relief, it came with anger, confusion, and disbelief. "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my best efforts to remain composed. Charlotte's gaze softened, revealing a vulnerability I had never expected. "Because I didn't know if you would survive the truth. You think love is simple, Horace, but it's never simple. It's messy, dangerous, and sometimes, it's about who survives the game, not who wins it." Her words struck me harder than any betrayal could. The story she unfolded was intricate, a web of lies, protection, manipulation, and hidden alliances. Families intertwined with politics, old debts, long-forgotten promises, and silent enemies moving in the shadows. The world I thought I understood was only the surface, and I had been playing my part in a story much larger than I ever imagined. As the cafe filled with the soft hum of conversations, My thoughts spiraled. I could see Charlotte in a new light, not as the girl who had betrayed me, but as a strategist, a survivor, a woman shaped by circumstances I could barely comprehend. And yet, I couldn't ignore the raw emotions that had built over years. The pain, the heartbreak, the nights I had spent questioning my worth and choices. Then came the moment that changed everything. Charlotte reached across the table, her hand brushing mine, a spark of the past igniting in the present. "Horace, I need you to trust me one last time," she whispered. My heart raced. Could I? Should I? Every rational thought screamed against it. Yet a part of me, the part that had loved her once, the part that had hoped for a storybook ending despite everything, felt drawn to her. The next days were a whirlwind. We navigated a delicate dance, truths revealed, emotions tested, boundaries challenged. Every interaction was loaded with tension, with the unspoken acknowledgement of a shared past that neither of us could ignore. Jordan remained in the background, a silent observer, his presence a reminder of the stakes, of the dangers lurking beneath the surface. I realized that my feelings for Charlotte had not disappeared. They had evolved, hardened into something complex, something dangerous, something that could either save or destroy me. One night, as we walked through the city streets, the lights reflecting off wet pavements, Charlotte finally confessed the truth I had feared yet needed to hear. "Horace, I didn't just make mistakes. I was forced into choices I never wanted, trapped in a web of obligations and threats. Every action you interpreted as betrayal was survival. And now, the final piece falls on you." Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to break. The final piece she spoke of was a revelation that shattered my understanding of everything. A hidden enemy, someone I had trusted, someone who had manipulated events from the shadows, was planning a move that could ruin all of us. Charlotte's past decisions, Jordan's interventions, even my own choices. They were all part of a high-stakes game I had been drafted into without consent. The danger was real, immediate, and inescapable. As adrenaline surged, I realized that this story, our story, was no longer about love or betrayal, it was about survival. Every lesson from the past, every scar, every heartbreak, became a weapon, a guide, a tool to navigate the chaos ahead. I looked at Charlotte, seeing the determination behind her eyes, the unspoken acknowledgement of shared danger, and I understood. We were bound together, not by choice, but by circumstance, by fate, by a hidden force that had orchestrated our lives long before we even met. The days turned into nights of planning, strategy, and covert operations. I saw sides of Charlotte I had never imagined, a leader, a tactician, a protector. Jordan became an unlikely ally, his calm demeanor and strategic mind a stabilizing force. Together, we pieced together the puzzle of lies, threats, and secrets, discovering allies and enemies hidden in plain sight. Each revelation brought new dangers, but also new insights, new understanding of the intricate web we were entangled in. And through it all, a subtle, undeniable connection grew between Charlotte and me. A bond forged not by love alone, but by shared danger, mutual respect, and the understanding that survival sometimes required trust in the most unexpected places. My anger, my pain, my past heartbreak, they remained, but they transformed into something powerful, something that could fuel strategy, guide decisions, and protect those we cared about. The climax approached with a tension that could be felt in every heartbeat. The enemy, cunning and ruthless, revealed themselves in a confrontation that tested every lesson we had learned. Decisions had to be made in seconds, lives hung in balance, and every move could mean triumph or disaster. Charlotte, Jordan, and I acted in perfect synchrony, a team forged by circumstance and sharpened by danger. When the dust finally settled, the truth emerged. Betrayal was never as simple as it seemed, love was never as naive as it appeared, and survival required understanding the layers beneath appearances. We had endured, we had fought, we had learned, and in the aftermath, I realized the story was far from over. There were no guarantees, no simple resolutions, only the knowledge that the bonds formed in fire, trust earned in chaos, and lessons learned in the shadows would guide the path forward. And as I looked at Charlotte, exhausted but unbroken, I understood the ultimate truth. Some relationships transcend love and hate, betrayal and loyalty. They are forged in the crucible of life itself, tested beyond measure, and only the strongest survive to write the next chapter. The city lights glimmered once more, reflecting off wet pavements, signaling the dawn of a new era, not just for us, but for the intricate story of survival, love, and secrets that had brought us together in the first place. The tension that had been simmering for weeks finally reached its peak. Every plan, every calculated move, every hidden ally and secret enemy, all of it was coming to a head. I had thought that after the confrontation with Charlotte and the revelation of Jordan's hidden protection, I understood the game we were in. I was wrong. The truth was far more dangerous, far more twisted, and far more personal than I could have imagined. It began with a message that made my blood run cold. Your time is almost up. Trust no one. There was no sender, no trace, just a chilling warning that sent shivers down my spine. Charlotte saw it the same moment I did, and her calm, composed exterior faltered for just a second, a crack that told me the threat was closer than we feared. Jordan's eyes narrowed, scanning the surroundings like a predator ready to strike. We all knew the clock was ticking, that every second we delayed increased the risk, that one wrong move could destroy everything. Our strategy had been meticulous. We mapped out potential threats, tracked patterns, and set traps to flush out the hidden enemy. Yet, despite all our preparations, I felt a gnawing sense of unease. There was a shadow lurking behind every decision, a whisper of betrayal that no amount of planning could anticipate. The deeper we delved into the maze of secrets, the more dangerous it became, until it felt like the very air around us was conspiring against our survival. Then the first blow struck. Jordan discovered evidence of a mole, someone we trusted, someone embedded in our circle, feeding information to forces we couldn't yet name. The betrayal cut deep. Who could it be? Who had been watching, waiting, manipulating every step we took? Every ally suddenly became a suspect, every gesture loaded with hidden meaning. Charlotte's face remained serene, but I could see the tension behind her eyes, the way she processed threats like a seasoned general preparing for battle. We decided to confront the mole directly. The plan was risky, perhaps reckless, but there was no other option. We set a trap at the very location where our enemies had begun their infiltration, a deserted warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Shadows stretched across the cracked floors, the air thick with dust and anticipation. Every creak, every echo, every flicker of movement felt like a potential death sentence. Hours passed. Time slowed. And then, we saw movement. A figure stepped into the dim light. The moment of truth had arrived. My heart raced, adrenaline coursing through every vein. The figure's face emerged from the darkness, and I froze. It was someone I had trusted completely. Someone I had never doubted. Betrayal had a face, and now it was staring directly at me. The confrontation was brutal. Words, accusations, confessions, they flew like daggers. Every secret, every lie, every hidden agenda came crashing into the open. I realized then that the stakes were not just personal, they were life and death. The mole had been orchestrating chaos for months, manipulating Charlotte, manipulating me, manipulating Jordan. Their goal was more sinister than I could have imagined. To dismantle everything we had built, to destroy the fragile web of trust that had taken us so long to form. Charlotte's reaction was a revelation in itself. She didn't panic. She didn't plead. Instead, she became a force of nature, striking with precision and strategy that left the mole reeling. Jordan and I followed her lead, moving in perfect synchrony, a trio forged not just by survival but by the understanding that only together could we withstand the storm. Every decision, every risk, every moment of courage mattered. One misstep, one hesitation, and everything would collapse. The battle was both mental and physical. The mole had resources, allies, and contingencies we hadn't anticipated. But we had something more powerful: unity, determination, and the lessons of the past. Every trick, every strategy we had learned, every ounce of trust and betrayal we had endured, became our weapon. The confrontation stretched for hours, a tense dance of power, deception, and raw emotion. Finally, the mole was cornered. The truth spilled out like a dam breaking. Their motives were rooted in envy, ambition, and a desire to control the narrative of our lives. They had underestimated the bond between Charlotte, Jordan, and me, the resilience forged through shared trauma and mutual trust. With every secret revealed, the danger began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of clarity I had never thought possible. Yet, even in victory, the cost was evident. We had survived, but scars remained, emotional, psychological, and physical. Charlotte's calm demeanor was now tinged with fatigue, her usual sharpness softened by the weight of recent events. Jordan remained the stoic anchor, but even he carried the invisible marks of tension, stress, and sleepless nights. And I felt a transformation within myself, a shift from naive trust to informed resilience, from heartbreak to understanding, from chaos to cautious hope. In the aftermath, as the city slept unaware of the storm that had unfolded in its shadows, I reflected on everything. The journey had been harrowing, full of unexpected twists and turns. Love, betrayal, loyalty, survival, they were not abstract concepts anymore. They were lived experiences, shaping who I was and who I had become. Charlotte and I stood together, not as lovers, not as adversaries, but as survivors. Our bond was no longer defined by romance or heartbreak but by shared trials, trust earned through adversity, and the unspoken understanding that some connections transcend conventional labels. And just when I thought it was over, a new message appeared on my phone. This is only the beginning. My stomach churned. The enemy may have been defeated, but the game was far from finished. Charlotte's hand found mine, her grip firm and steady, grounding me in the moment. Jordan's eyes met mine, a silent acknowledgement that our journey was ongoing. We had survived the storm, but the winds of fate were relentless, always testing, always challenging, always shaping the next chapter. I realized then that life, much like our story, is never simple. It's a labyrinth of choices, consequences, and hidden forces. Trust is a weapon, love is a gamble, and survival demands courage beyond measure. And as the first light of dawn broke across the city skyline, illuminating the streets we had fought to protect, I understood the ultimate truth. Some battles are won not with strength alone, but with unity, strategy, and the unyielding will to endure. Charlotte squeezed my hand. "Ready for what comes next?" she asked. I nodded, a mixture of determination and cautious optimism in my eyes. Jordan smiled faintly, the weight of the past weeks reflected in his calm demeanor. Together, we stepped forward, knowing that the road ahead would be perilous, but confident that whatever lay ahead, we would face it as one. The city awoke, oblivious to the epic story that had just unfolded in its shadows, and I knew that this was only the beginning of a saga that would be remembered, whispered, and never forgotten. The dawn after our victory felt surreal. The city lay beneath a veil of normalcy, the streets bustling with life as if nothing had happened. But we knew better. Every smile, every hurried step, every honking horn masked secrets that no ordinary citizen could comprehend. The mole had been exposed, yes, but their network, the strings that controlled chaos from the shadows, was far from dismantled. The message on my phone haunted me. This is only the beginning. Those words were not empty threats, they were a promise of the storm yet to come. Charlotte, Jordan, and I convened in our safe house, a place that had seen our planning, our fights, and our moments of doubt. Maps were spread across the table, documents stacked in piles, screens flickering with surveillance footage. Every thread we had traced from the mole's activity hinted at a larger, more organized force. Someone, or something, was orchestrating events on a scale we couldn't yet fathom. Our previous enemy had been a pawn. The real player was still in the shadows, watching, waiting, calculating. The first clue came from a seemingly innocuous source, a dropped USB drive at the warehouse during the final confrontation. Jordan had picked it up, skeptical at first, thinking it might contain just the mole's files. But when we decrypted it, what we found was chilling. Detailed plans, encrypted communications, financial trails, evidence of a global syndicate operating with precision. The scale was staggering. They weren't just targeting us, they had agendas that spanned continents, manipulating events that affected countless lives. And now, we had become a threat to their operations. Charlotte studied the files with her usual composure, her eyes scanning the screen with surgical precision. "They've been watching us longer than we realize," she said. "Every move we've made has been catalogued, analyzed, and anticipated. The mole was just one layer of protection for the real threat." Her words were calm but heavy with meaning. It was no longer just about survival. It was about dismantling a system built to destroy anyone who dared interfere. Our next step was clear. We needed allies. We couldn't take on a global syndicate alone. But finding trustworthy partners was another challenge entirely. Every person we approached could be a spy, every handshake could hide a blade. Jordan suggested reaching out to former contacts in law enforcement and intelligence, people who had operated in shadows similar to ours. It was risky, but necessary. We were racing against time, and hesitation could cost lives. The first ally we secured was Mara, a former intelligence operative with connections across Europe and the Middle East. She arrived unannounced, her presence both commanding and enigmatic. "I've been tracking them for years," she said without preamble. "You're lucky to have survived the first wave. The second will be relentless." Her insight confirmed our fears. The syndicate was methodical, ruthless, and always 3 steps ahead. We had survived the opening gambit, but the real battle had only just begun. With Mara's help, we mapped out the syndicate's operations. Their resources were staggering: private security forces, offshore accounts, encrypted communications, and a network of informants embedded in governments and corporations alike. Every lead we followed revealed more complexity, more danger. One wrong move could trigger retaliation that would spread far beyond our immediate circle. It was like playing chess against an opponent who could see every possible move before it happened. And then came the warning signs. Small, almost imperceptible attacks that felt random at first. Our communications were hacked, vehicles tampered with, shadows following us through the streets. Each incident escalated, each attempt bolder than the last. The syndicate wanted to send a message. They wanted to prove that even the strongest, most prepared could be broken. But Charlotte, Jordan, Mara, and I were determined not to bend. We adapted, improvised, and fortified our defenses, knowing that the next confrontation would test everything we had learned. The first major strike came one night as we returned to the safe house. Explosions rocked the perimeter, and armed mercenaries surrounded the building. We were trapped. It was a full-scale assault, coordinated with precision and brutality. The air filled with smoke, the sound of shattering glass and gunfire deafening. Charlotte and Jordan moved instinctively, their training and experience turning chaos into a calculated defense. Mara handled communications, guiding us through escape routes and signaling reinforcements. Every second was a life-or-death decision. We fought through the night, a whirlwind of strategy, skill, and sheer willpower. The syndicate's forces were formidable, but we were united, each of us leveraging our strengths to survive. As dawn approached, the attackers retreated, leaving behind destruction and unanswered questions. It was a Pyrrhic victory. We had survived, but the safe house was compromised, our identities partially exposed. The message was clear: they were watching, they were capable, and they were unyielding. In the aftermath, we regrouped, assessing our losses and planning the next move. Mara's intelligence indicated the syndicate's leadership was based in multiple locations, each operating semi-autonomously but connected through a central command. To dismantle them, we needed to strike simultaneously, with precision and coordination that rivaled their own. It was a task that seemed impossible, yet the stakes demanded nothing less. Charlotte's leadership became even more critical. Her calm under pressure, her ability to anticipate moves, and her strategic mind were our guiding lights. Jordan provided the tactical expertise and operational experience, while Mara connected us to resources we had never imagined. And I became the liaison, the strategist, and sometimes the decoy, a role that tested my courage and endurance like never before. Our plan was audacious: infiltrate key nodes of the syndicate, gather evidence of their operations, and expose their leaders to international authorities, all while remaining one step ahead of their retaliation. Every decision carried risk, every move could be our last. But retreat was not an option. We had come too far, survived too many trials, and faced too many betrayals to back down now. As we prepared for the first operation, tension coiled around us like a living thing. We knew the syndicate was aware we were no longer naive, that every misstep would be met with calculated vengeance. The city outside moved on, oblivious to the epic struggle unfolding in its shadows. We were warriors in a silent war, fighting for justice, survival, and the fragile hope that even in darkness, light could prevail. The night before the operation, we shared a quiet moment. Charlotte, Jordan, Mara, and I sat in a dimly lit room, the weight of what was to come pressing down on us. "We've survived this long because we trust each other," Charlotte said softly. "Tomorrow, that trust will be tested like never before." Her words were both reassurance and warning. The next day would not just be about survival, it would be about confronting a force that had eluded justice for decades. And as we looked out at the city skyline, the lights twinkling like distant stars, I realized that our journey was far from over. The syndicate was vast, the stakes unimaginable, and the dangers relentless. But we had each other, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of unshakable determination. Whatever shadows awaited, whatever trials lay ahead, we would face them. Together. And this time, we were not just surviving, we were preparing to fight back. The sun rose over the horizon, illuminating the streets, the buildings, the hidden corners where the enemy plotted. And in that light, I knew the true battle was just beginning. The shadow of the syndicate loomed large, but so did our resolve. And as the first signals of dawn cut through the night, Charlotte's hand found mine once more, a silent promise that whatever came next, we would face it without fear. The city felt heavier that morning, as if it had sensed the approaching climax. Every shadow seemed sharper, every whisper carried urgency. After weeks of tracking, fighting, and evading the syndicate, we had finally pieced together their final operation. A coordinated global strike that could topple governments, ruin lives, and erase the fragile balance we had fought so hard to protect. The sheer scale of it was incomprehensible. But now, with Part 4 behind us, every lead pointed to a single, pivotal location. The core command center where the syndicate's leadership had been orchestrating chaos for decades. The tension was palpable. There was no room for error. Charlotte, Jordan, Mara, and I gathered around the table for the final strategy session. The maps displayed satellite imagery, schematics, escape routes, and layers of surveillance data. Every detail mattered. "We only have one chance to end this," Charlotte said, her voice steady, yet charged with intensity. "We take them down today, or everything we've worked for will collapse. No second chances, no distractions." The weight of her words sank in. We had faced mercenaries, explosives, espionage, and betrayal, but nothing compared to the stakes we were now staring down. Mara had coordinated a network of allies from previous operations, intelligence operatives, hackers, and insiders within government agencies who had secretly monitored the syndicate for years. "We can infiltrate their system, disable communications, and expose every move to global authorities simultaneously," she explained. "But timing is everything. If we slip, even for a second, they'll detect us, and the consequences will be catastrophic." Each member of the team felt the adrenaline rush of the moment. There was fear, yes, but also determination. Every scar we carried, every narrow escape, every lesson learned was about to be tested in one decisive moment. We approached the compound at night, blending shadows with skillful precision. Security cameras, armed guards, and automated defenses were formidable, but with Mara's digital sabotage and Jordan's tactical planning, we moved like ghosts. Every step was calculated, every heartbeat synchronized with the operation. The tension was almost unbearable. The core of the syndicate was just ahead, yet it felt like walking into the jaws of a predator that had been waiting for us all along. The first breach was clean but tense. Alarms triggered silently, thanks to Mara's hacking prowess, but we knew the window was narrow. Inside, the corridors twisted like a maze, reinforced doors and security checkpoints testing every ounce of our patience and skill. Charlotte led with unwavering focus, clearing paths and anticipating every possible threat. Jordan provided cover, moving swiftly and silently, neutralizing obstacles with precision. And I, carrying the weight of the past battles and the hope of victory, followed closely, ready to act at a moment's notice. Then came the confrontation with the syndicate's inner circle. They were unlike anyone we had faced before, calculating, ruthless, and utterly confident in their control over the world. But their confidence faltered when they saw our resolve, our unity, and our preparedness. What ensued was a battle of wits, strategy, and sheer willpower. It was no longer just about physical confrontation. It was a chess game where every decision carried irreversible consequences. We split into teams, each targeting key operatives and secure systems. Mara hacked into their communications, broadcasting evidence of their crimes globally. Charlotte and Jordan neutralized armed guards, clearing paths toward the leadership chambers. Every second counted, every mistake deadly. The tension was unbearable, yet there was clarity in our purpose. This was the moment we had trained for, fought for, and lived for. The culmination of every sacrifice and every struggle rested on our shoulders. Finally, we confronted the mastermind, the shadow behind the chaos, the one who had orchestrated the syndicate's rise. His composure was unnerving, but Charlotte, Jordan, Mara, and I stood united. The confrontation was both verbal and tactical, words exchanged like weapons, strategy unfolding in real time. Every lie he told, every threat he made, only fueled our determination. The fight escalated to a crescendo, blending intellect, skill, and courage into a single, decisive confrontation. In the end, it was our unity, trust, and preparation that prevailed. The mastermind's network collapsed, evidence was broadcast worldwide, and authorities swooped in, ensuring justice was served on a scale previously unimaginable. The syndicate, which had thrived in shadows for decades, was exposed and dismantled. The city, oblivious to the invisible war it had been part of, slowly returned to a semblance of peace. As dawn broke once again, we stood together, exhausted but victorious. Every scar, every sleepless night, every narrow escape had led to this moment. Charlotte's hand found mine, Jordan's eyes reflected relief and pride, and Mara allowed herself a rare smile. We had faced the impossible, survived it, and emerged stronger. The journey had changed us irrevocably, forging bonds and courage that would never break. But even in victory, there was a quiet awareness. The world was never truly safe. New threats would arise, shadows would return, and the cycle of conflict would continue. Yet we had learned that unity, strategy, and courage could turn even the darkest circumstances into triumph. And as we looked out at the skyline, the rising sun painted the city in light and hope, signaling that the night had ended and a new chapter had begun. This was not just an ending, it was a testament to resilience, intelligence, and the unbreakable human spirit. We had survived the shadows, faced the unimaginable, and claimed justice where chaos once reigned. And though the future remained uncertain, one truth was clear: together, we could overcome anything.